This year, when participating in fulfilling the call, worship was mentioned as one of the primary focuses of our work together. At least one custom was made that worship at our house is not particularly reverent. And yes, worship is one of those words like prayer. If there is no deity, is it worship? If you have a better word, write in your suggestions. Everything considered. However, at 10:30 of a Sunday morning, we enjoy a time of communal, reverent reflection, which it seems could use some polishing. What I will say about worship is that it's like a box, a container for our gathering in search and silence. We want it to be a beautiful and fairly simple space in both time and place, so that our attention can remain focused on reflection, wonder, hope, perhaps a little laughter, some tears, and community. Part of providing a place for worship is providing the best possible atmosphere for the largest possible group of us. It must be fluid because we have different needs. We are UUs, after all. The job of the worship committee, the speakers and other volunteers, is to provide the emotional space for these community encounters. We hope to encourage people at all levels. The committee has been considering some suggestions that will perhaps serve as walls for our container, boundaries we can lean on, expand, change, and that we can count on to safely enclose us during a vulnerable time together. Just as when you build physical space, building spiritual space demands that you first ask the purpose of the room before you build, and then continue to ask how this room serves. As I've said, and recently we've heard that it doesn't work as well as it could. So we wanted to explore that. I realize that a couple things have happened over the years. One, I think the worship committee and I have leaned on the format established by the original group of UUCSVers. Many of the people who used to do worship support are no longer part of the community, so those things go undone. We don't have now and have never had an chalice table guild. And there are many new friends and members in this community who were never taught about our customs. And this is new, that we have maintained such a focus on each person's doing what is right in their own eyes, knowing that in each other, that we haven't looked at whether all people's needs have changed in the community, nor have we paid close attention to what people coming in might need. So we're going to stick our toe in it a little bit. But some of my interest in this was fostered by my visit to a doctor last year, when I was reminded that in my family, vision was a perhaps somewhat time-limited privilege. It is also true that a central tenet of our tradition here and in the larger denomination is universal welcome. We might need to admit that we have been slip-sliding away from a healthy focus on our worship. So we need to look at it. Sarah and I have been talking about this for months. As you might expect, the committee discussed it at its last meeting, and it's only now that Dee and I have had conversations, and she sent me some stuff, and all of that's getting, bound up in this. The notion of welcome, accessibility, and inclusion is a much bigger picture than worship. We'll hear about that as the building committee explores it and as other groups do as well. This is the important work of church. The bad news for y'all is that quite a few things are not the responsibility of the minister or the person designing this or presenting the sermon. I know, we all lived in hope. Some of what needs to be done is better organization from the worship committee. We're working on that. And there are jobs that belong to the worship associates that have been forgotten. And it looks as if there will be a very quick worship associate meeting after services next week. Some of what needs to be done is to establish a few guidelines and remembrances of what's available. And it's probably more than most UUs are excited about, because we don't like those things, but our need to welcome everyone is important. And it's a community responsibility. No fears, all of this will show up at some point in a written format, but this is a good chance to think it through, a beginning chance. So let's start at the beginning. Worship goes better when everyone shows up on time. That means, my beloved coffee drinkers, you have to show up early enough to get your coffee. We should channel this into the other room. Help your kids with their hot chocolate and be in your suits at 10:29. What? Suits. In your suits. Wear suits. Birthday suits, at least. I like, for instance, she has a birthday suit on today. Right. Right. Okay, seats. Right. Be in your seats. It's hard. I know. I am not the world's most on-time person. But let me remind you, it's not as if you're not looking at your watches at the other end of the service. They're going like, is she still talking? And so, she's waiting to talk. We need a tech committee. Someone needs to run it. Somebody needs to train others to do the work. Part of UUCSV is that we are not necessarily every Sunday attenders, or many of us are not. People work on Sundays, and kids are involved in different activities. Many of the most tech-savvy people are teaching our kids and can't do this. Nonetheless, the sound system needs to be turned on every Sunday by someone who is neither the preacher nor the president in the congregation. And thank you, as always, to Alan and your beloved son when he's the guy that does the other end of this. And there are others who make this happen when you're here. But it needs to be one of those, every week it happens. And in addition, people come to visit us. Some people come to visit us because of what's on the web and what they see in the newspaper. So the more we have on the web about what we do here, the better off we are. And some people show up because they like the sermons they found online. So every sermon should be recorded and put up on the web. We have great preachers here, and we borrow from great preachers. We also have friends and members who are sick or homebound and who would like to have the opportunity to be with us in worship. Not long ago, we subscribed to a video technology called Zoom that allows video conferencing. We now have the capabilities for Zoom Church and church members who are interested in doing that. I love that it's Joanne McComb who's first going like, could I come to church? That would be so great. And how many of you don't even know who Joanne McComb is? A lot of you probably, right? But we have the technology. What we don't have are technology elves. And just a side note, we have never really used technology during services other than the recording technology, and they're fairly good indications the community is fostered and built upon personal connections. And we have good music and musicians and don't need canned music unless, of course, there's something special. Not that there seems to be much that Dee and the choir won't tackle. Whether or not we should, we're game. And you gamely listen. That's great. But there could be times we want to use technology differently. We'll feel our way forward with all of this. But if you have talents, we need you. Also, the worship space needs to be set up to welcome us. Chairs need to be in the right place. The sniffle section needs to be established where people can sit that are actually somewhat isolated from the rest of the community. Some of this may fall to the worship committee and some to the aforementioned altar guild. We've leaned on Lenore for far too many years, and, it's great if she's willing to keep doing it, but, she might not be here some Sunday, and someone should know what she knows. We have to do the Vulcan mind meld with Lenore before we get this done. But you all are the incredible magic missing ingredient. When there's a well-functioning group, the minister isn't required to hop up and search to replace whatever's missing during church. Why can't she do that before the service, you ask? Because I have other work on Sunday mornings, and actually, it's not anything I'm particularly good at, even if it were in my job description. So this is one of those places that we can have easy church. Music. So unlike many UU congregations, or at least unlike the stereotypes we tell about us, which is why do UUs always sing so slowly? They're reading ahead to see if they approve of the words. Right. But if you have D, who pushes along at a great rate, then we don't read, just sing, you know.
No slow singing.
We'll get over it next time, you know. Right. We have many gifted, and if we're bothered about them, generally we sing right through them. If it's too much, you know, and there are ways, look at words. If there are words you don't like, think of words to replace them and sing with vigor. You know, so what if God, universe, nature all get sounded on the same note? That's UUism, right? We have many gifted musicians, and their offerings elevate our worship. We are lucky. We have recently gotten in the habit of clapping after each musical piece. And there are mixed reflections on clapping in worship. And there are those who feel that it interrupts the meditative moment, and others who feel, of course, that it doesn't. But we've had clapping for quite a while now, so we're going to ask you to think about not clapping for a while. Let's see how it works. If you want to celebrate a piece, use silent hands, which is sign language, or rub your hands together. And here's the really important thing. If you liked a piece of music, talk to people after the service. Because as nice as clapping is, wow, that was great, goes a lot farther into the week. So everyone likes to know their work is appreciated. So we're going to ask you to do the same with preaching. You know, I had a conversation with someone yesterday, and she goes, well, for some people, you know, basically what she said, she was a woman of color, she goes, clapping after something is white people's way of entering into the praise. I'm like, well, maybe we can find another way to help us to loosen up, right, with the music. We would like to hear from you about which hymns you like or don't. If there are ways we might help you learn hymns, then talk to us. There's a lot to consider here, and this process will be a communal one. And the more you participate, the better worship will be in a long run. We've always had asked Dee to do at least one hymn sing for us. Maybe we need more than one. Maybe we need to have one in the green book and one in the blue book, or something that we learn to sing the hymns that are part of our tradition. And there's nothing wrong with sitting down with a hymnal occasionally. Readings. Now, the UUCSV has always assumed a high level of reading, and many of us have used our responsive readings from the worship book. But the fact is, not everyone reads easily. Some people have reading disabilities, others read poorly, some may not read at all, some of us are losing our eyesight, and our children, particularly when they're still in the services, really want to participate. So how do we do that? Yes. We have no idea. But there'll be some experimentation, and you might be read to a bit more. You might be asked to participate in call and response. We'll see. It will evolve over time. We'll be talking with all our preachers. This may feel restrictive after years of freedom, and our focus as worship leaders is on welcoming the worshipers. One thing the committee suggested was, at the very least, we always use the church covenant. There's lots to explore. It takes time, with all of this, it takes time, successes, and failures to get this right. And there will never be just one right. The important thing is to be thinking of it, to be noticing it. When something goes right, tell people. Jeannie Lumpkins, our worship chair at this point, mention it to her. Email works. She actually texts, as opposed to me. But probably the most challenging portion of the service to manage is joys and concerns. First, using the mic really matters. But many of us think we have a great outside voice and don't need to use the mic. But even loud voices can be at the wrong frequency. I'll never forget when I was doing freelance preaching, a woman came up to me and said, "Oh, my dear, I love your preaching. I hate the way you think about the Bible, but I can hear every word." And that's really about the fact that I speak in a low timbre. But all of us drift away from the microphone. And it doesn't help. Yesterday at UU Plan, where you would think there would be a bunch of people who were trained professionals to do it right, spent all their time going like, well, and then I'm going to talk about something about, it was like, use the mic, folks. You're a pastor. Use the damn mic. Sorry. But there are people here who cannot hear you without it. And I don't think I suggested this, but one of the things that's really helpful, I send out my services. I type up the whole service. I send that out on Sunday night to some people who aren't here. But I also bring in a copy for Bill Barish because he actually doesn't have a computer and he doesn't hear well. And he's so excited. And it takes, I'm printing mine off anyway. You hand in the sermon, and he gets to be part of the discussion. So, but we could really use a congregational care person who works with joys and concerns. People write to me on Saturday evening and Sunday morning. I get texts on my phone. I can promise you my phone is in the car. If your leg fell off, we're in trouble. I'm not going to be praying for you at that moment. But there should be a designated person or email that would gather these up. I'm focused on so many things at that point. The odds are good. I'll forget, or I'll just have to keep grabbing the mic back and say, oh, right, here was this other thing. We've always done our joys and concerns in the way we do them now, and there's something quite lovely about it. But as we grow, if we want to continue to have individual joys and concerns, we may want to prune the process a bit. I'm sure this is upsetting to you, Carl. I'm sorry. I know how you like it when it goes on for long hours. But I'm sure, right, really? Yeah, right. We all miss the mark with these. We're going to miss it again. And missing the mark is just that. It's not a grave sin. It's just like, oh, I might want to do that differently. So here's a short reminder, and you'll hear from us in a written reminder. Some things to remember. This is an opportunity to mention something briefly. Not really to tell the story or to make an announcement. There's a time for announcements, and coffee hour is really meant for stories. While UUism is a liberal religion, there are people here across the political spectrum who are either members, friends, or they're visiting. We're a religious organization. We don't promote candidates, nor do we disparage other ones. Everyone is welcome here. And joys and concerns should not be one of those places that people are going, where's the door? I could leave. We don't want that. We want people to be joyous to be here. This is a time to raise, and this is so hard. I need to be looking in the mirror here. Concisely raise issues and events of concern. Also remember that people have varying levels of privacy, so as we tell our stories, remember the others that are here. In the long run, all we're doing is trying new ways to keep the focus on the service. And on the worship. We're finding that larger groups and the process of growing require some careful attention. And newcomers should feel both comfortable and feel there's a way to find out what the social norms of the group are. It's another way to warmly welcome the honored guests among who we find ourselves. So let's try some of these for a while. We'll adjust some other things. It's all a worship experience. The best way to do feedback is by email. Write to Jeannie, write to me, and let's see what happens. We are here to be community to one another. This hour of service is an invitation to contemplation, maybe even discovery. We choose to do that in one another's company. And when it is done, we go to coffee hour, anxious to chat with our neighbors, perhaps about something we heard in the sermon, perhaps about something we heard in joys and concerns, perhaps about things that need to get done differently or done for this community, or perhaps just about our lives. It all matters. We all matter. So let's keep making this better. Thank you.